Good evening and welcome. This is episode 20 of the 4x3 podcast. I'm currently lying down pretty much in the darkness, and I usually these days go to bed around 8 p.m. It's a bit of a late one this evening, and lately for the last couple of weeks I've been setting my alarm for around 4:30. And for maybe the last week, I slept in a little bit longer, maybe 20 minutes to half an hour. But I have managed to create this routine, and I get up in the morning, I'm tired mostly every day. I mean, whatever. Some days I am more well balanced than the previous, and it's good. I started out by having a 5 o'clock alarm and then 4:30, and I'm thinking about going down to maybe 4:20 and then 4 o'clock, but it all depends on the seasons. So it is lighter for longer because it's a summer period, and then it will basically become very dark early as winter approaches, and I guess the time schedule will change a lot again, so the routine becomes out of whack, and I don't really follow the daylight savings thing here in Victoria. Reason being, I lived up in the far north for a short period, and it just didn't make any sense to actually have that shift in time. It just makes sense to me just to keep things as they are. And with my weight loss thing at the moment, it's sort of, once again, difficult. It's periodically difficult, and I've hit 85 kilograms, and the last time I lost weight, like a few years ago, I was around that weight, and I never went below that. I'm pushing my limits, and my weight is fluctuating, and obviously it's problematic, and I'm at like a rest period where I just don't want to exercise, but I want to eat more. And during the summer period, I find myself eating foods that I shouldn't eat because it's too hot to eat them, but I do it anyway. In essence, I'm more also pushing my luck, but I'm not annoyed enough to care, because I'm in a situation where it could take a while, but I'm patient. And it seems like that's the best approach for me, and I think other people anyway as well. And it's becoming difficult with certain things. I haven't had soda or drinks that are sort of sugary in a couple of weeks, I would say, maybe more, but I'm finding myself wanting to have them again. Nonetheless, that's my little progress. I'd like to talk about how strange it is that people adopt their parents' attitudes, and maybe their siblings' attitudes, but more so the parents. A lot of people that I've come across, or at least known for long periods of time, and I know who their parents are, and I'm not excluded in this, my children aren't excluded in this. It's just the weird adopted behaviour even if those people separate from them for long periods of time, it seems as though they adopt certain attitudes and certain addictions like alcohol and cigarettes, and I don't have that problem at the moment, but I know of some people, their attitudes are very close to their family, even though they don't really see them as much. And it's just bizarre. I mean, it's so obvious because they were raised by their parents and we were raised by our parents, but it's also like something where it would be great if people have this generational chain and they just break it, because it takes one person to become the black sheep of the family to actually give it a go and say, I'm not going to allow this to happen, and then raise the children a certain way, and then those children have children, and then you hope you've done your best to make sure that that doesn't happen with them. And it's not even just attitudes. I was thinking about this earlier today, and one of the things that is bizarre is like where people live and how people's lives are in a way of following in the footsteps to a T, even if they don't mean to actually follow that and they don't want to follow that. Now, one example of following in footsteps is I grew up next to a train line. I mean, I don't know whether or not this is true for like 99% of the population, but essentially I had this housing commission house I grew up in up until I was 19, and over the back fence there was a train line, relatively close to the house, but a partial distance away from the house. So I would like to say it's very close. It was very close growing up, and my parents had 3 children, and I have 3 children, and I live next to a train line, and my children are growing up next to a train line, just as I did, and it's unintentional, and I sort of grew up in a country-ish area, but not too country, and I remember distinctly that I lived in the suburbs, but sort of on the back end of farming areas, and it all the roads led to beach towns in one direction, sorry, and then off to another town. Now, I'd love to explain this in detail because it's interesting for anyone who understands what the scene looks like. So, I grew up in Geelong, and I grew up in Grovedale, and behind our house was like a little farm area that led off to the beach towns on a back road, and we used to walk up the farm area randomly, and it was basically clear paddocks. Now, today where that is, there, when I grew up, just as I entered adulthood or my teenage years, they built estates across the road, so that was empty farmland all around us. And then where our primary school was, down the road, they built an IGA. So where we were, we didn't have too much, but if you go for a walk, a fair walk, you'll get to a milk bar with a bunch of shops, or a little strip of shops. And then if you drive a little bit and you can walk, you hit Warm Ponds. And that area was a couple of shops. So you had like the Coles, and then you had like Bilo or Franklin's and whatnot. You had McDonald's across the road still, and the skate park is exactly the same, or from my understanding, still exactly the same as from when I was a kid. And they built a lot more estates out there, and obviously a giant complex in 3 sections. So now it's just completely massive on the Warm Ponds aspect. And then you have, I think it's called Haynes Road. I don't know what that's like anymore. Last time I went there was a short while ago. Then you have Torquay Road, which was mostly country when I lived out there. And it all led back to a single road behind, a single road that led back to the road we were on. And then if you went the back road, you'll hit Marshalltown Station. Oh, sorry. I think it's called Marshall Road. You'll hit, and then you'll have the primary school somewhere there. And just again, as I reached the end of high school, or maybe even sooner, they built a train station in Marshall. So just as our generation was growing up and becoming adults, it became massive. And then you have Belmont, which is relatively the same, effectively, I guess, almost, right, with a few more shops. There wasn't, when you went to Whittington and Newcombe and all that, there was not this giant bridge from when I was growing up. I believe it was like a small, I think it's called Nova Pass, I don't know. But now it's like this giant bridge setting. And then when we moved to the beach town, St. Leonard's, Port Arlington area, and St. Leonard's and Port Arlington, this road was just single roads, and now they've built giant roundabouts and made it look very much like 110 Road, and basically essentially destroyed the entire region and made it a lot more bigger. I wouldn't say destroyed, well, all roads keep leading and getting bigger, and it's just becoming very, very massive. Even as an adult, I moved out to Corio and Norlane, and Corio, from what I remember now, is pretty massive. Well, sorry, not pretty massive, but they built estates where we used to live, and then that's sort of going out to Lara as well. Well, it's not like completely full of estates, but what I'm thinking of is like it's going to link up, and there's one section that I used to go down. I don't think it was quite a dirt road, but I think it was a paved road, but they've put traffic lights there, which is very odd, because I think part of it was a dirt road and it was nothing. So you have estates, and then it links onto this, and then there's like traffic lights, being so bizarre. And it's interesting when they build traffic lights where there weren't any traffic lights, and then they also build them on a straight section of road where you have right of way because you just keep driving straight, but then it's just like a blockade now where you have to wait a few seconds before you continue on. It's like driving down a dirt road and then you're forced to stop. It's just so weird and odd to me. And then that's a new set of road rules invented and policed, and it's a fucking bizarre thing. It's like, not to go on a tangent, but it's like a stop sign versus a give way sign. And I've been pulled over for failing to stop, even though they made it clear that I shouldn't have gone because it's on a major road, but it wasn't really. And I've seen stop signs and give way signs in weird places where give way signs should probably be a stop sign, and stop signs, like, it's just weird. Anyway, so I'm just explaining this entire map of where I used to live. A lot of things used to be different, and it feels like with every new generation there's a new thing that happens. And one thing that's interesting is I've created a new generation, and I live in a pocket where it's like rural. I guess I call it semi-rural because there's towns nearby, but it's really technically rural. And all those roads link to other places and smaller towns, but smaller towns that could have extreme progress in the coming years. And then once that happens, it's just all the farmland we have on top of us would probably be estates, and just continue to spread out and just create this, never-ending, build, just constant chaos. And then every new generation grows up, and then there's like a thing where they're forced to live in like a city and a suburbs. And like then that generation, and then the generation after, and it just continues on and on and on. I don't know, to me it's a bit weird, but yeah, that's the tangent of basically how I find it weird that people unintentionally might end up like their family member. And that people need to break the chain a bit, but anyways. So I realised something maybe like 2 days ago, and that was basically there's certain people I dislike who like public figures, that's probably a poor use of the word, celebrities who have podcasts and comedians and things like that. And I realised that when people dislike them or have some sort of hate towards them, like I do, it only fuels their success a bit more. and I was looking into someone, and I'm looking in the comments, and people are just hating on them so hard, and I agree with them, but then I just came to the conclusion that it's a waste of time just basically hating them because their ego is getting worse because of that, and because they're not going to care because they get more success and more money just from people disliking them. It makes them a lot of money. And it's like the example of if, say, Elon Musk does something wrong. Basically, the stock market or whatever crashes, and people buy the stocks for whatever, and then when he's back on top again, they sell them the stocks again or whatnot. And you know, this is going to make them a lot of money. I don't know how to explain how it works with celebrities, but I think it's more or less because people are looking into it more, and like it gains more traction and gains more views and gains more notoriety, and then it translates into revenue, and then these types of people, who certain people might not have heard of them before, become fans of them and attach themselves to their ego, and then that's where you get like a cult mentality of bowing down to your leader, and then that leader treats you like a slave and treats you like shit, and you just love them so much, but you know, you're just fueling their income, and then that gives them more incentive to punish you and enslave you, because you just want to bow down to the queen bee, basically. And then you do anything for them. So anyone that speaks out against them, those little bees become the, they attack anyone else. So it's kind of interesting, and there's certain people that I used to love listening to, but it's become a problem of they no longer care too much about what people think, because now they are a business model and they have to follow strict rules and basically keep both sides of the table hooked in, and that continues to have an audience. So neither these podcasters are for you or for the other person in any argument. They are just out there to share information and milk both sides, feed both sides, if that makes sense. Which is it's very interesting, and it not to go off topic, but it reminds me of like a successful show like South Park. Now that show, I haven't watched it in a while, and I used to love it, but that show is successful because they have new ideas every week, and it's always based off of information that's happening in the world, which is generated automatically every single day. and that's why it's mostly successful. And with successful podcasters, there's endless amounts of information that they can bring up, and also they regenerate ideas and regroup the same people, because the way the general population works is they're hooked into something and then they quickly move on from it, and then they forget about it, and then they need to be reminded of it. So if someone has a podcast where they're talking about good health and how to, go to the gym or whatnot, but they talk about other stuff, not just that, people attach themselves to that idea, and then that podcast generates millions of views and a lot of money. They can repurpose that idea and make that income again. So that's like having a product on the market, and then you sell that product and it's discontinued, and then you bring that product back. It's the same on eBay, realistically. You got a product that came out new like 20 years ago, and now it's considered antique, so the price is almost on par with what it was 20 years ago. But usually, not to get off topic again, usually that happens when there's a decent product that compares to something that is more modern, and there's like this weird market value. Like, imagine having buying a freezer, a chest freezer, for example. Now, I have one from like 50 years ago or something like that. I don't know how old it is, but it's very old, and we booted it up and it's great. Now, a lot of people know or must know that these companies are not going to make any more money if they have a really good freezer, and they're not going to sell another freezer in their life. So what happens is people want to go back to something that's more reliable. So the market is very odd, and that freezer from 50 years ago is all of a sudden worth the same value as a newer model freezer that's fucking shit. And people are going to go towards the more modern one because there's not a fair market, and they're going to not entirely trust the old unit because its time is going to near its end at some point, because it has old parts, and but that's in theory not 100% correct, because a lot of old stuff is really good. But because of this unfair market, a lot of people are just going to buy the crappy thing that's just going to die. Like, I don't know, not going to last a lifetime, basically. But yeah, and I already forgot why I got onto this, but I pretty much it happens every so often, but I pretty much like burn my throat with something hot, because I'm a fucking idiot and I decide that I don't chew my food properly. I end up doing something stupid. Like the other day I made chips, and yeah, I have chips, unfortunately, and I ended up chewing the thing, except it got stuck in my throat and it was burning hot. And so I was in extreme pain. And yeah, now I'm paying for it because I now have a sore throat. But word of advice, chew your fucking food. I've always said to myself, the way I'm gonna, disappear in this world is probably by choking on food. It's unfortunate when I start to enjoy rollerblading a lot more than skateboarding, and I really, really just want to, I only do skateboarding, but that old memory of just skating around on rollerblades always comes back, and then I just really, really enjoy the shit out of it, and then I end up practicing more and begin to feel a lot more confident again, and then eventually I hurt myself, and then I can't do it anymore again. For both things. And rollerblading's a little bit more difficult in that you have to move a lot more body parts. It's almost like running around, and you have these heavy boots on your feet basically, and you can get sore ankles and I don't know, always jumping in the air, I suppose. But I do say it sort of helps with balancing and making you a bit more flexible. You could probably say the same with skateboarding. If you grew up skateboarding and you're very good at the damn thing, you're going to become flexible and more balanced. So really, it's just about, whatever, really. Well, I think it's time for me to go to bed. It's probably a bit late. For anyone listening, thank you and good night.